the skater. I'm tired of big corporations taking all the cool and fun parts out of games and shaving off any edges in an attempt to make it as marketable as possible. Buy Skate Story and play it beginning to end to stick it to the corporate overlords and find out what you're really made of.
What's up, skaters? So I just beat Skate Story here on YouTube where I stream whatever I feel like, and I just wanted to take a few minutes to run through some of my thoughts and experience from my playthrough of the game. Before we get too far into all my thoughts, I want to say that I'm not eloquent enough, honestly, to explain how perfect and emotionally impactful this game was to me. It's really hard, honestly, to put to words how Skate Story hits every individual so hard. I was reading through Steam reviews as I was writing this, and although not pictured much in these reviews, I've never seen so many gamers write thank you for making this game in their reviews. It really is unlike anything else on the market, and I cannot recommend it enough. Nonetheless though, I still want to try to put to words how cool this game was, and hopefully you can learn a thing or two about my experiences from it. So yeah, with that out of the way, if you want to watch my playthrough, a link will be in the description and it might be on screen somewhere. So now, let's start off with a little bit of background, both on my experience with skating games and Skate Story itself. On the surface, Skate Story is a game from Samang that was published by Devolver Digital on December 8th, 2025 to Steam, PS5, and Switch 2. It follows a skater made of glass and pain who is attempting to win his soul back from the devil. All he has to do is eat the 7 moons of the underworld to fulfill his contract. However, more specifically, something I found when I was researching this game was that Samang likes to call it a vaporwave skateboarding game with inspirations from the story of Orpheus. Skate Story itself will task you with objectives that range from hit 3 flip tricks in a row to destroy the eternal centipede to save the underworld. Skate Story is a completely unconventional, nonsensical, absurd, ludicrous game that has much more in common with a fever dream than any other narratively driven game. And that's all I'm really going to say about the story, because I don't want to spoil anything or take anything away from the experience that is Skate Story. I think it's a really unique game that everybody who calls themselves a gamer should play. Now, it might seem like I'm putting this game on a pedestal, but that's because I am, and it absolutely deserves it in my opinion. I've played a lot of skate games since I was a young lad who played Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 on my PS1, and nothing else honestly compares to the look, machinima, soundtrack, and experience of Skate Story. The list of skating games I've played, with a quick note about how much time I've spent in each one, are on screen now, and I'm going to repeat it again. None of them compare to Skate Story. The biggest difference between Skate Story and all these other games is that Skate Story doesn't necessarily want to be marketable, accessible, conventional, or anything. Skate Story just wants to be Skate Story, and that leads us into the next thought from my playthrough, which is that Skate Story is absolutely a product of love and experience. It's hard to describe, but Skate Story is a complete project of love, for skating, for storytelling, and for games. The controls, momentum, and world were all created deliberately, and they all are absolutely drenched in style. For example, if you watch early dev footage, it looks like the game at one point had normal right stick flick control, similar to Skate, and I would bet that that probably worked really well, as Skate 1, 2, and 3, and even the new one have proven, but we're not talking about the new Skate. However, Samang must have felt that that did not convey setting up one's feet to execute a flip trick. So instead, R1, R2, L1, L2 are used for setting up for flip tricks. And I'll explain more about the controls later. But I want to add that despite barely being able to ollie and shove it in real life, I thought that this really accurately portrays the deliberate action of setting your feet up correctly to hit a flip trick. And to further go along with this, the simple flip tricks like a kick flip or heel flip or shove it all require simple inputs of just one of the shoulder buttons, but more technical tricks like a hard flip or a tray flip require deliberate thought on how to set up, and almost can sometimes kind of feel cramped and awkward to set up for. In addition to just the controls, the locations you skate through are a combination of linear trials and open skate spaces. I'm not a street spot or New York expert, but they all seem to draw inspiration from street skating, and more specifically, I assume are all dreamlike recreations of skate spots in New York, and they are an absolute blast to skate in Skate Story. Skating through trials and speeds, stomping out combos on bosses, or just trying out combos in the open world hubs, the skating is incredibly fluid, weighty, and seemingly true to life as it can get. Some of my personal favorite touches are that your deck will vibrate when skating over graded materials, make like a little tick 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 noise, and the controller will also vibrate. And then also when you get big air, when you land it, you'll be a little off balance sometimes. And one last little touch I really liked was you just can't arbitrarily start spinning in the air or swap spin directions. You have to commit to the rotation before taking off. And it's all these little touches in Skate Story that really come together to create an amazing video game skateboarding experience. To further help with this grounded feel, the camera in game simulates a trailing skater following along to film you. The camera is also fisheye, because of course it is. It's a skating game after all. The camera shakes and wobbles like it's actually being held by another human. And when you wipe out, you shatter into pieces and the camera is dropped. It's all incredibly visceral, and also asks the real human question of when you fail and feel like you've been broken into a million pieces, do you quit? No, you pick yourself back up and keep pushing. What I'm trying to say is that the skating in Skate Story feels incredibly weighty, responsive, grounded, intuitive, and most importantly fun. And not too sure honestly how to wrap all that up, so let's just say the skating in Skate Story is incredibly thoughtful. And now let's move on to the idea that sometimes style is substance. As I hope the gameplay on screen is shown, Skate Story has to be one of the most drenched in style games I've ever seen. This style is impossible to escape from the moment you start Skate Story to the end. Its unique style permeates every part of the game. I remember in my playthrough, there were many times where I was so impressed and blown away by what was on screen. I must have called the game gorgeous at least 20 times in the 2 sessions where I played when I was talking. I'm not sure how else to explain it other than saying that Skate Story has more style than any other game I've played on this channel before. And even though I just rambled about how awesome Eclipsium's art and style was, in my opinion, Skate Story absolutely reminds Eclipsium that there are levels to this. But let's move on from art and talk a little bit more about some game design decisions I thought really elevated the game. Perhaps my favorite part of Skate Story's game design is that in this game, there's never any real pressure or constant reminders of, hey, go do this thing to progress, or tons of guardrails to ensure that you move through the story at their speed. Instead, Skate Story opts to let you, the player, find their own tempo and pace and just move through objectives in the story and locations. And this is such a relief because I've had it with games just throwing a bunch of things on screen. On top of this open-endedness approach to gameplay and just how you progress through the story, when it does get into its linear moments, it conveys objectives through creative design. For example, let's look at some gates in Skate Story. In most games, some text or pop-up will appear on screen saying something like, hey, air through these gates, ollie through them to continue and unlock the door. Instead, Skate Story just puts little icons on the screen and it trusts the player to figure out what it means, given what they have learned so far. This sort of intuitive objective design is all through the game, and in my opinion it is absolutely fantastic, and I love to see this in games. In addition to this, the objectives are just either make it to the end of the section or do some tricks to beat a boss. In my opinion, so much of the joy of this game is derived from expressing yourself in either of these gameplay situations, where instead of just sending it as fast as possible through the trial sections, it's about seeing the lines that are in front of you as you're going through them and hitting cool combos that just make the ride a more enjoyable experience. You're not doing it for more XP, not for more in-game currency, not to unlock some new skin. You're doing it just for fun and because you think it looks cool. And I love this about Skate Story. The same idea of just doing something because it looks cool also applies to boss fights, because in theory, you probably could just cheese them by just hammering kickflip, heel flip, shove it over and over again, but where's the fun in that? The boss fights, just like the linear trials, are all about expressing yourself and having fun, and that to me is something that really helps elevate Skate Story above so many other games. So, to try and wrap this up, like I said before, I don't think I'm anywhere near eloquent enough to try and talk about Skate Story, the game, and just how it impacted me, but what I do know is that I think that Skate Story was without a doubt one of the most fun, artistic, philosophical, and incredible games I've ever played. The soundtrack is perfect, the gameplay is visceral and grounded, but most importantly, I think that Skate Story is just Skate Story. It's a project of everyone's experiences through life. To close this out, weirdly enough, the absurdity of Skate Story reminds me a lot of Tim Robinson sketches, and I Think You Should Leave. Where on the surface, they're all absolutely hilarious and totally out there, but somehow they always manage to pull on really deep strings in all of us. So yeah, go play Skate Story and feel something. And if you stuck around till the end, thank you so much for watching. Take it easy.